TSN's Motoring 96 is brought to you by Quaker State, the intelligent oil for longer engine life, and Midas, the way it should be.
You know, when I was a kid, I always wanted to be a firefighter, or fireman as they were known back then. I used to hang out at halls like this and wait for what seemed like forever until that call came in that would send these trucks out with their sirens and their lights ablazing. And you know, back in those days, the main job of a firefighter was to fight fires. But as we're about to see, today's firefighter probably spends as much time on the highway as he does on the ladder.
Firefighters from as far away as Australia, South Africa, and Holland gathered in Burlington, Ontario recently for the 12th annual International Extrication Competition and Learning Symposium. But these men and women were not here to fight fires. Instead, they came equipped to confront the automobile.
Our duties have changed over the years, and we are now involved in motor vehicle auto extrication a lot more than we were a few years ago. So this competition brings teams from all over the world who have competed in regional events to get here. So it is the best of the areas that are here, and they're competing and learning from one another, and that's the key to the whole thing, is to learn new techniques in this field from the competing teams. They draw lots for their events. There's a limited competition which they use standard tools. There's no heavy hydraulics or anything like that. They have to use hand tools. And then there's a secondary competition which is unlimited. They can use any tool that they've invented or any heavy hydraulic tool to get their task accomplished. They have time limits in both pits to do this, and they're competing against one another in both those events as well. The team does not know what they're getting. The only thing they know is when they're competing. They are sequestered in a room prior to their event or their pit being set up, so they do not know what's going to happen to them. It's quite a surprise to them, and which is no different than they would encounter in a motor vehicle accident out on the highways of today. The judges are from all over the United States and Canada, and the key thing they're looking for is safety. Is the vehicle stabilized prior to entering, making extrication? Is somebody in command and in charge? And is it done in a safe, forthright manner? And that's what they're looking for. They have time limits to get people out, but safety's the key issue here.
Shields down. Safety man, medic, two man. Man dump, equipment dump, rubbish dump. Action!
I'm the team leader. What I do is generally overlook the scenario. I don't get involved in the actual cutting or laying down the doors, taking out the glass. I stand back and have a look at the overall plan and watch for safety factors. We really do have to familiarise ourselves with quite a few of these American cars. They are quite different to ours, especially the older ones. There are quite noticeable differences in the smaller American cars as well. We service a very, dangerous job that we've got to know be up to date on techniques of taking people out of cars, because those people die in cars if we don't get them out. So that's what this is about. We come here, we want to learn off the Europeans, we want to learn off the Americans, we want to learn off the Canadians, the different styles they use, their different techniques. And if we can take a few of those techniques home and apply them on the road, we've done our job.
Well, we saw the plane, and I thought, well, we got to start right from square one, and we do it just like any other accident. Saw the plane, well, it's a plane. It could be a tractor trailer, it could be anything. But basically, you got two vehicles smashed, and there's a victim in there, and it's our job to take that person out of there. But I was surprised to see it.
How's it going, man?
How'd it go, guys?
Good, very good.
Happy with it?
An airplane.
I hope so.
Sure.
All right.
You believe that? An airplane.
Sure did a good job.
Thank you.
Did you guys expect something like that?
No, not an airplane.
Not at all.
There's lots of air traffic in Niagara Falls, but there's lots of places they can shut them down.
All right,
Don't landing like that. All right. Well, we're prepared for it. And try an airport.
It's coming. It's not like the old days when we went there with a hammer and a big long bar and tried prying them out. We got some really, really decent tools now, and it makes our job a whole lot better.
You guys slope down. 335 to control. Captain Garner on scene and in command at the Holiday Inn. Scott, I'd like you to secure the perimeter. Randy, John, a wide circle check. If you notice anything hazardous, let me know. We got a storm drain over in the corner there, so if we have any spills, we got to address it immediately.
We take it for real, serious stuff, and if you practice something long enough, it becomes second nature on the highway. So, do things 20 times, and if you do them right 20 times, it just becomes second nature. So.
The pressures are great, I guess, to get a little butterflies in their stomach when they're sequestered because they don't know what their event's going to be. But they do this every day, most of these people, and I don't think it bothers them too much. It's a competition. They all like to win. In my opinion, they're all winners here.
Sidewall, sir.
About a decade ago, Ford turned the auto industry on its ear when they introduced the original Taurus and Sable. Well, for '96, they're out to do it all over again. This is the third generation Taurus, a car that has seen some very radical restyling. Beneath the new sheet metal, Ford have increased the strength of the body substantially. The bending strength is up by 65%, while the torsional rigidity is up by 87%. The difference this makes is enormous. First, this new body does not flex anywhere near as much as the previous model, and secondly, down the road it should keep those annoying rattles and squeaks at bay. The increased body stiffness also gives the modified McPherson strut suspension a better platform from which to work. On the twisty blacktop, the new Taurus handles exceptionally well for a large family sedan. It also provides a substantially better ride when cruising the boulevards. Part of the reason for the improvement in both the ride and handling is down to the internal rebound springs found inside the nitrogen gas-charged shocks. The suspension also uses revised front and rear end geometry to control dive during braking and lift under acceleration. All in all, a very nice package. There are two engines available in the Taurus. A reworked version of last year's Vulcan engine or a new 3-litre 24-valve quad-cam V6 dubbed the Duratec. This engine delivers 200 horsepower and 200 pounds-feet of torque. Obviously, with this kind of power on tap, the throttle response is quick, especially in the mid and upper ranges. The credit here goes to a set of secondary intake runners that are opened electrically at 4,000 RPM. The benefits offered are twofold. With the secondary shut, you get better low-end torque, which improves low-end performance. When they open, they allow the engine to breathe. If there is a disadvantage to this engine, it is that most of the fun horsepower is found quite a long way up the rev range. The result is that you have to keep your foot into it if you want the power. Personally, I have no objection to this, but it's hardly the way that most people drive the family buggy. For this reason, if I were buying, I would stick to the base engine and save myself a bunch of money. Matched with either engine is a 4-speed electronically controlled automatic with overdrive. The shifts are smooth and coordinated and the kickdown response is quick. The brake system is comprised of front discs and rear drums and is offered with anti-lock brakes. During the brake tests I required 115 feet to stop from 80 kilometers an hour. The pedal feel is, unlike the old car, crisp, and several hard stops revealed little in the way of brake fade. As with the body, a marked improvement. As is typical with most family sedans, you'll find 3 sets of seat belts in the rear of this Taurus. The 2 outside ones are 3-point belts, the one in the middle is a lap belt. Now this is handy because it makes installing a child seat very easy. However, if you put an adult back here, Ford have even thought to give you a shoulder belt. So now the center occupant has got a 3-point belt as well. In short, the best of both worlds, and it's a very nice touch. The interior look and theme is as radical as the exterior styling.
The highlight is the new center console that houses the radio and climate controls. At first the setup looks a little complex and somewhat out of place. However, use the thing for a couple of minutes and the feel is so natural you can operate it without ever looking at it. The other plus is that the radio is given the prominent position and at long last has a real knob for volume. Elsewhere the instrumentation is analog, the power windows, locks and mirror controls are all placed within easy reach, as is the cruise control. The front seats are large, nicely contoured and offer good lateral support. The rear environment is spacious and will actually accommodate 3 adults in relative comfort. The trunk is enormous and benefits from the split folding rear seat that adds so much in the way of versatility. On the Taurus, the option list is enormous and includes such things as a cell phone that can be operated hands-free, a sunroof, and a trunk-mounted 6-pack CD. On the safety front, you'll find dual airbags, ABS, adjustable upper belt anchors, and of course, child-proof rear door locks. Well, that's it for this edition of Test Drive. Have Ford hit a home run with this new Taurus? Well, judging by the reaction that it received during the test drive, I should say they certainly have. From my perspective, the car's got the right mechanicals, and the look, well, it grows on you. It's time to update our long-term Accent. Now, to date, we've had a lot of fun with this car. It's very agile, great to drive around town, and the comments we've had on the colour, well, you have to hear them to believe them. However, we found a couple of minor things, and that was the whole purpose of bringing this vehicle into our test fleet, and that was to test long-term reliability. Well, we found the heater cable for the air distribution vent has become disconnected. It's only coming out of the main vents, and with winter coming on, we need defrosting. The other thing, the right side door seal has started to come away. Both relatively minor, and they will be addressed when we go in for our 6,000 kilometre service. Now, we'll have more on that later, cost per kilometre and how we were treated at the dealer.
We're back at the World Firefighters Extrication Competition in Burlington, Ontario. I've been walking around talking to a lot of the firefighters, and while they never expect their job to become an easy one, they do think car manufacturers could help them out. They would like to see manufacturers make a point of supplying fire departments with more information about the cars that they're building. The more prepared these men and women are when they arrive at the scene of an accident, the more lives that are going to be saved. All right, let's now head to the garage and join Bill Gardner, and you gotta believe Bill also has advice for manufacturers.
Well, Brad, I gotta tell you the truth. They don't call here every day asking for my advice, but if they did, regarding this week's subject, which happens to be valve adjustment, I tell them to put the specs and the procedure back in the owner's manual where it used to be. Now, some manufacturers still do provide the specifications in the owner's manual, but many don't. In the case of the Civic, they just tell you that adjustment is required periodically. It will tell you when it's required as far as kilometers or months or whatever, but it doesn't give you the specifications or tell you how to do it. That's where you have to purchase a shop manual to get those specifications. I guess they want you to bring the car to the dealership and have them do it. Now, in the case of this Honda Civic engine, we had to remove the spark plug boots. We pulled those out. There's a couple of cables clipped to the valve cover that had to be separated and one hose. Then there's just 4 fasteners that hold the valve cover to the engine, and with those already removed, it's a simple matter just to lift the valve cover up and position it aside. Now you can see the entire valve train of this 16-valve 4-cylinder engine. Along the front of the engine here are all the exhaust valves, and along the back here are all the intake valves. There's 2 distinctly different clearances for those valves, and we have to make sure that the camshaft is on what we refer to as the base circle. In other words, the particular cylinder that you're adjusting has to be either on the compression or power stroke. So crank it over for just a second. Okay? Now you can see the action of all the valves here, and what we want to do, we want to adjust this particular cylinder here. So we're going to watch for the intake valves to go down and then close, and after they close, we'll just bump it over slightly, and then all 4 valves in this cylinder should be in the right position. Right now I can't feel any lash on these exhausts, so I know that the exhaust valves are open somewhat. Okay, bump it over slightly. Again. Okay, leave her there. A little bit more. Okay. All right, now I can feel clearance in the intake valves. and I can feel clearance in the exhaust. And if you want to confirm it, you just look in here at the camshaft lobes and make sure that the rocker arm is on the base circle of the lobe so the valve's not lifted. Now what you do is select the appropriate feeler gauge. I looked it up in the shop manual, and in this particular engine, the clearance is 9/1000ths of an inch for the exhaust valves and 7/1000ths of an inch for the intake valves. Now, of course, in some manuals, they're going to give that to you in metric. In any case, you can make the conversion and do it quite easily. Now, this one's a little on the loose side. There's no drag to that feeler gauge. Now, you can't see that on the shot, but I'm telling you that this pulls through here rather easily. And when it's loose like that, you can't tell how much extra you've got. In fact, even with the feeler gauge in there, I can feel a bit of clearance. So what I'm going to do is loosen the lock nut, and you just take a 10mm wrench in this case, loosen the lock nut, and then you take a screwdriver and put it in the set screw, and you can turn it in to make it tighter or out to make it looser. Now, they do give you a window of adjustment, a bit of a tolerance on these adjustments, but try and get it as close as possible. And when you feel a light drag to that feeler gauge, you've achieved the right adjustment. Now, one other thing I should tell you about this is the fact that some engines, the specifications for this valve clearance are given hot, and others are given with the engine cold. So make sure that you're performing the adjustment with the engine at the correct temperature, or your adjustments will be all wrong. Now, if the valves are too tight, you run the risk of burning a valve. That's one of the reasons you'd want to check the adjustment periodically. And of course, a burned valve is a very expensive engine repair. If they're too loose, the engine will be making excessive mechanical noise. You'll hear ticking or clattering at idle speed or when the engine's revved up. And you'll also lose performance if the valves aren't adjusted correctly. So keeping the valve adjustment in spec is quite an important service procedure on engines like this. And as you've seen today, it's not all that hard to do. And in the case of most of these engines with adjustable valve trains, they've even designed the valve cover gaskets to be reusable, so you don't necessarily need any parts to do this job. Just a set of feeler gauges, a screwdriver, and a wrench. It's pretty simple after that. Till next week, I'm Bill Gardner for Motoring 96.
The Air Force Base in Downsview, Ontario was recently transformed into a giant vehicle showroom. On display was the entire General Motors fleet lineup for 1996.
To General Motors, the fleet business is extremely important. It represents, as a market, fleet represents something in the order of 26% of all cars and trucks sold in Canada every year. And it represents about the same percentage of GM's business. So over a quarter of all we sell is for fleet. As we speak, we currently have over 1,000 customers here, and they're customers who buy in excess of 10 units of GM product every year. And this is the 6th such ride and drive event that we've had over the last 3-4 weeks, starting in Montreal, going out to Vancouver, Edmonton, Calgary, Winnipeg. We've just about been everywhere.
We buy all makes and models, and there's over 600 different models in Canada to choose from, so buying a car is an experience. If you haven't done it in the last few years, you can't appreciate it if you just see the car sitting in the showroom. You have to get out and get a feel for the car.
They're looking for things primarily, how well will that product do in business for them? And will it be reliable? Will it get their sales rep or their service rep where they want to go every day of the year? And whether you're a buyer or whether you're a seller, it's a great business to be involved in. Cars they're in your blood, and we all enjoy it.
A recent survey revealed when it comes to purchasing a big-ticket item, buying a new vehicle ranks only 6th on the consumer's wish list. Taking a trip or vacation was number 1. Among those who wish to purchase a vehicle, 52% said they intend to purchase a used one. 33% will buy new, while 13% expect to lease, which is double the percentage of Canadians who currently lease.
Our Midas tip of the week concerns tailpipes, or in the case of this van, lack thereof. We all know that in the wintertime, it's common for us to do a little bit more idling to warm the engine, defrost the windows. Maybe we're running the heater to keep the interior a little bit warmer. In any case, those are conditions where an incomplete exhaust system like we have on this van could be an extremely hazardous situation. Fumes could easily enter the vehicle, and we all know how dangerous that can be. So if your exhaust system shows any signs of leakage or missing components, make sure you have it repaired. And in the case of this van, the front half of the exhaust system was still in good shape, so it didn't get noisy when that tailpipe fell off. That's a thing you could easily overlook. A visual inspection will take care of it. That's your Midas tip of the week.
Do you buy your cars one at a time or by the truckload? Fleet sales next on Kenzie's Corner.
Kenzie's Corner with Jim Kenzie.
A guy shows up at your car company and wants to buy 20, 30, or 100 cars at a crack. They're going to be pretty happy because that's a serious chunk of business. It's called fleet sales, and it can make up anywhere from a few percent to as much as 35% of the sales of certain brand lines. For example, the Ford Motor Company owns Budget Rent-A-Car, and a few years ago, 25% of all Lincoln Town cars were sold directly to Budget. And in England, some 70% of all new car sales are company cars. Now, some end-user companies buy their fleet cars directly from the manufacturers. Others use middlemen organizations called fleet managers. These people buy cars in bulk and then lease a few cars back to the individual end-user company. The advantage there is that the end user, maybe a cookie manufacturer, doesn't have to worry about running a fleet. They let the experts do it. Now, there's a few drawbacks to fleet sales, particularly from the car manufacturer's point of view. The first, obviously, is price. If a guy's buying a whole boatload of cars from you, you're going to have to give him a discount, and it can range up to 20% off list price. Secondly, there's a prestige issue. Particularly upscale brands like Lincoln and Cadillac feel that leased cars, fleet cars, daily rental cars deteriorate the brand image. If you've paid $50,000 for a new Caddy, you don't want to see the thing sitting on a rental lot someplace. And also, when the new cars are returned to the used car market after their initial tour of duty, after 2 or 3 years, the fact that so many come on the market at the same time and that they were bought at a discount in the first place tends to depress the used car value. And the poor schnook who bought the same car at full retail pop is going to be faced with a 3-year-old car that depreciates at the same rate as a 3-year-old Stanley Cup t-shirt. So the Cadillac and Lincoln and other prestige marques are trying to reduce their dependency on fleet sales. Still, if a guy comes to your car dealership and wants to buy 30 cars at a crack, you're hardly going to turn him away. I'm Jim Kenzie.
Well, the World Firefighters Extrication Competition is continuing, and as we heard earlier, this competition isn't so much about winning as it is about learning. Well, I know I've learned one thing, that if I'm ever unfortunate enough to be trapped in a car, that thanks to these kind of competitions, the chances of my survival have greatly increased. These men and women are professionals. That's it for now. We'll see you next week for more stories about cars and the people who drive them.
TSN's Motoring 96 has been brought to you by Quaker State, the intelligent oil for longer engine life, and Midas, the way it should be.